Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Iro. I represent the Mediterranean Information Office and the network of MEDIS. And within the next 1.5 hour, we're going to present to you a recently produced material on plastics, actually on how to avoid or minimize plastics in schools. In the framework of an Erasmus Plus project that is called Plasteam, and within which we run for 3 years now multiple activities in order to support schools to minimize plastic use. And we do that through applying innovative methodologies and basically the STEAM or STEM approach. So without further delay, I will share my screen. I'm here with my colleague Vicky, and she will help me with Vicky, if you want to say a few words.
Hello, welcome everybody. I'm working together with Iro in education for sustainable development programs, and we have a particular interest in marine litter education and education against plastic pollution. So this is one of our key contributions within the Plasteam project, and welcome from my part as well. I think we can start, Iro. You are muted.
Yes, I hear the noise of the construction taking place next room. Okay. But okay, in the next 1.5 hours, we will browse in the Steambox activities. So we will basically open up the contents of this new material, explain what we do in each activity, and share some tips, guidelines, if you decide to run these activities with your students, with your audience. We will share some ideas that can be useful for you in your upcoming STEAM labs within this project. In the next 2 or 3 months in all the partner countries. We're going to hold several seminars or multiplier events, and we'll have the chance to apply this material. You can take the floor and interrupt me at any time to ask questions for clarifications in case you don't understand something. We want this webinar to be interactive. So you can keep your camera closed if you wish, but we would like to see your faces. We're not so many in this webinar. We will use the microphone and the chat as the main tools for interactivity. So often you will be asked to take the floor. Don't be ashamed, take the floor and share your views with us. And as I said already, this video recording will be then uploaded in the Plasteam website. Let me see. So let's start with a warm-up activity. In the next 1 minute, please draw an hypothetical circle around your body, no matter where you are, with a radius of 1 meter. Please count all the number of plastic objects that are either made of plastic or have plastic inside them. Count objects like shoes, backpacks, clothes with polyester, the table, your computer, even the sticker on your banana. I give you 1 minute to make this sum, and please write it in the chat.
Some are pretty fast. They have started already. Note it down.
Vicky, do you see the chat?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Actually, I'm telling that some are pretty fast. We have
Yes.
already answers. 10, 12, 5, 4, 12, 14, 6. We have a ranking from 4, 5, let's say, until 15, even more.
So we can see that from this very tiny activity, that no matter where we are, no matter what we do, in most of the cases, we are surrounded by plastic items. Plastic has invaded our lives to a point where actually life is unthinkable without it. It's part of our lives. In the first activity of the STEAM box, we ask some questions on plastics. Students start with what they know already by making a mind map about plastics. And some of the things they know about this material may generate new questions about it. So we ask them to note this down, the questions, individually in post-it papers, share their questions, then group them and find trends. Maybe they have some common questions they would like to know more. So after grouping and ranking their questions, the class may run a project to delve deeper in the issues raised. In essence, this is an introductory activity to the entire STEAM box. Examples of questions, as were given by a plastic partner some months ago. How is the raw material for plastics being processed? Does plastic need to be clean in order to be able to recycle it? Why does so much plastic end up in the sea? How many years does it take to decompose in nature? Why is plastic not compostable? How many types of plastic are there? What is bioplastic? And is this biodegradable? Just to have an idea of questions that can be generated through such a simple activity. So now it's your turn. And please take the floor, whomever wants to, and give us some views, their views on why we should do such an activity. Who wants to take the floor? And please unmute yourselves.
I think Marvik already replied in the chat, but this is an oral question. Marvik, would you like to tell us a little bit more?
Simply that we take too many things for granted, even the materials we use. Well, when you see the number of items that you have on you, which is made of plastic, it's quite surprising.
Yes, and the numbers can actually be quite higher if we count the clothes, the shoes, the belts. If we count very carefully, the number is probably larger than 10 or 20, as we noted here. I see some.
In fact, it got me thinking. For example, buttons. Most buttons are made of plastic.
And in all probability, we all have a bottle somewhere.
And if we count the buttons, we can really.
I hope it's not single use. Okay, let's see how we saw it when we were thinking of this activity. So we see this activity as introduction to check the team's interest and level of knowledge around the plastic issue, and to realize how plasticized our lives are, and maybe start wondering what we can do about it to maybe to avoid some or reduce some of this plastic. Some tips if you decide to run this activity. Some questions that the students raise may be answered on the spot. You can, with an internet browser, you can find the answer on some questions. Others require a thoughtful reflection, a survey, or sometimes you need to contact an expert to get his opinion to reply some of the issues raised. You're welcome to encourage wild, unexpected questions. So there are no wrong questions. We accept everything, we group them, and then we may decide to delve deeper into some of them. Beware on the exchange of arguments during the ranking process or the grouping process. Make sure that all the students' voices in the groups are heard. And unless you have any questions on this activity, we can go on to the next. So again, we start with a warm-up. We share this photo with you, and I'd like to invite you to take the floor, open the microphone, and explain what is happening here and why might he be doing that.
I came across this program on, I think it was BBC, where the participants were actually made to wear the plastic they disposed of during that week. And it was surprising. It was very much of an eye-opener to realize how much plastic we actually throw away. And I think this probably reflects everyday life, where we have plastic all around us, and from the FedEx envelope, which is in plastic, up to the cups with the coffee we're drinking, you know, it just shows the wrappers of the chocolates, how much we actually consume without realizing.
Thank you, Marika. Indeed, this is the idea. The idea is to create a shocking experience through the amount of plastics and waste in general that we generate. So this guy here did that back in 2017, for already 5 years ago. So he made this shoot, and day by day he kept collecting his trash. Not only plastic, himself, he collected everything. So day by day, his uniform got heavier. At the end of this 30-day trial, he reached the average American consumption. He reached more than 30 kilos. So the average American throws away more than 1 kilo per day. And why did he do that? Of course, to create an interesting and a shocking site and create discussions around the waste generation. So in this activity, we propose to do something similar, to concentrate not in waste in general, but only to plastics, our plastic that is wasted in our home. Students start by guessing the quantity, number of items of plastic waste that is generated at a home level within an average day, or within an average week, or if you dare to do it for an entire month. They hold the plastic waste monitoring for 1 or more days with their families. They keep this waste clean, store it in transparent bags, and bring it back to class to check the initial assumption after this period is over. So when they see this pile of plastic waste, they wonder what they could have done differently to avoid some of this waste. Why do you think we can do this activity? What are your ideas? Why do such a monitoring of plastic activity with our students? Please take the floor, whomever wants to.
Some participants keep noting down on the chat, I can tell. Yeah, awareness, I see. Mathematical calculation and statistics. This provides evidence for sure. Awareness and motivation.
Yes, indeed. These are some of the reasons for doing such an activity. First of all, to create an interesting, if not shocking, at least an interesting experience through the amount of waste that will be accumulated. Another reason to do that is to discuss, to differentiate single-use plastics, plastics that we use only once and then throw them away, such as the coffee to go that we take on the way to the office, or the ordered food that we may usually have at home, or of course the PET bottle, the PET water bottle, and so on. So we can discuss about these plastics that are meant to be used only once and differentiate from plastic objects that have a long lifetime. Another reason to do that, this activity, is to check how the very act of self-monitoring our own habits and noting them down may inspire us, motivate us to reduce some of this consumption. And as we said, this activity is proposed to be done at the family level. So we want to check the household consumption, because maybe kids don't realize how much waste they generate because they're not responsible for keeping the house clean and so on. But if you do this activity at the family level, at the household level, you will realize that there are several more waste items that are generated apart from what a kid throws away. Some tips for doing this activity. So before starting, clarify what you will be measuring and how. For example, if you will be measuring the lid together with a bottle as one object or as two separate objects, so that you all count your items in the same way. This activity does not target food leftovers, paper, glass, or metal. That's why it's called a plastic diary. Only plastics. Invite parents to take part by sending them a note in advance. Aware students to keep all the selected items clean. And if you wish, you can link this activity to the Plasteam footprint app, an application that you can find online on the webpage of Plasteam. And it's an application that helps students monitor 5 symbolic single-use plastics that are found in schools. Questions? Or we move forward to the next. For this, you will not take the floor, you will write in the chat. What does the symbol mean? A, the producer financially contributes to a recycling scheme. B, the packaging material can be recycled and should be placed in the proper bin. Or C, I don't know. Now there are no excuses. Everyone should write something in the chat.
Well, if I may, we have a lot of B and a lot of C's. B and C mostly, not at all A.
Okay, let's see the correct answer. So the correct answer is that the producer of this product financially contributes to the recycling or a recycling scheme in their country somewhere. This does not necessarily mean that the packaging, the product that he makes, can be actually recycled. Maybe it's not recyclable. And actually, many of the packaging materials that we commonly use are not recycled. So in this activity, we ask students to bring in class some empty and clean packaging items. The scope of this activity is to learn to decodify what the various symbols, such as the one that we saw, mean. What do they mean when they see them in the material? Like most of you have this misconception that this symbol means that the material is recycled. Most of the consumers have this misconception. So this activity is we can use it to learn exactly what its code means and to cultivate their, let's see, their lenses on how to consume various materials, to be more cautious when they're reading the labels. So based on the symbols of each items, the students figure out how to dispose them, in which bin and how, and realize that a lot of materials cannot be recycled. So why do we do such an activity? Who has some ideas?
Orally, please.
To clarify the misconceptions, because really and truly, I thought those were items that could be recycled. So automatically I would put them in the plastic bins.
Good to clarify misconceptions.
To properly teach how to read symbols, Alessia is noting on the chat. And also this is a tricky one, Guido is saying to work a little bit on how greenwashing is working. This is an interesting aspect.
Indeed, a very interesting topic is how very many companies deliberately put signs that are misleading for the consumers. They create confusion in their tries to present their products as sustainable or green. They give false claims on their packaging. And indeed, this is the way greenwashing part of how greenwashing works. So this is an activity that gives us the opportunity to discuss all these subjects, to learn to decodify the symbols in the labels, to be more label conscious as consumers, to realize that not all types of plastics can be easily recycled. Actually, only 2 or 3 of the popular types. And this depends on the factory, on the infrastructure that you have close to your city. And to inspire more responsible management of our waste. If you decide to do this activity, of course, make sure that you as a teacher know in advance the meaning of its label. Have a variety of packaging items and labels. All packaging materials should be empty and clean, and avoid glass with younger students. In the material of STEAM box, we have a dedicated table where we explain, I think, the most popular, commonly found labels in products. Questions? Or we move to the next activity. Plastics are polymers which, once heated, melt and lose their shape. Is this claim right or wrong? You have 1 minute to write it in the chat.
Iro, can you see the chat? You can now. As you see, we have some rights and wrongs, but we have also a reply from Emma saying neither right or wrong, but depending on the type of the plastic in question, both,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
Yes, so it can be either or both. Some plastics can be melted when heated and given a new life, but most of them actually can't. So in our next activity, we ask the students to make their own plastic. Students experiment to make their casein plastic by heating up a cup of milk and adding some vinegar in it. So this creates some chunks that they immediately can take shape using their hands. They can give form and shape to their creations and let them dry for 1 or 2 days and maybe then color them. So this activity gives us the opportunity to discuss between thermoplastics, those that can be remelted many times, such as the PET bottles, the famous water bottles, can be actually recycled, and thermosets. These plastics, once they are made for the first time in their polymerization, they get a structure that cannot then break. We end this activity by asking them if their creation, their casein plastic, is a thermoplastic or a thermoset. It's actually a thermoset. If they heat this creation and try to melt it, it will never go back to the initial polymer. Why can't we do this activity? Why do it? Your turn now, your ideas. I see that people are shy to take the floor, but I'm glad that you're interacting through the chat.
Create awareness, they say. Learn between the difference of the different types of the plastics, thermoplastics, thermosets, help them clarify the differences, and teach that not all plastics are the same.
Yes, indeed, this is another misconception that many people, especially older people, have. They consider plastics as a single object. They don't realize that it is a plethora of thousands of projects, actually, different materials that are classified as plastics. Indeed, all what you say in the chat is valid. With this activity, we have the opportunity to practice some chemistry, experimentation, STEM skills, to get accustomed with polymerization, to differentiate between bio-based and petroleum-based synthetic polymers. So what they make is bio-based. The casein plastic is a bio-based plastic. To realize that not all polymers can be easily melted and therefore recycled. And if you want some tips, if you want to run this activity, before doing the experiment, watch tips and videos online. So it's better that you model the activity yourself before you try it with your students. Do the experiment in the school lab. Link with a lesson of chemistry if you want to delve deeper in the polymerization. And please be aware that bio-based plastics that come from milk, corn, starch, soya, these are very popular now. You can find them in stores and the supermarkets. But again, we have a misconception. Many people think that because they are made from natural materials, from corn and so on, that they can be recycled. No, they cannot be recycled. These actually create a problem if you put them in the recycling bin. They contaminate the bin. They claim many times that they are biodegradable. So they claim that in nature there are the bacteria that can break them down to the initial polymer, but this is also in most cases not valid. They can biodegrade, but only through an industrial composting process. If you have at home a compost pile and you add such a bag made of starch or soya, it will not decompose. So all these things are things that you should be aware of if you try this activity. Any questions? Yes, I think Marika,
yes. What about the bags that we get to throw the compost in to create compost? Those plastic bags, those are made from friendly polymers, or are they a different material?
I'm not sure which bags you are talking.
Okay, we have bags where we throw away vegetables and leftovers, things which are not plastic, obviously, and don't go in the black bag. We have the black bags, the plastic bags, and the other bag, this white bag. Is this made out of natural materials such as milk, like you just described, or is it another kind of plastic?
There is, I'm not sure what goes on in Malta. For sure, there is some certain, in some countries and in some cities, there are some recommended bags for using what we say, the brown bin, what is meant to be composted. So these bags, even though they claim that they are biodegradable, they are not under the normal composting procedures taking place at home. So in all probability, if you use a bin that is in your neighborhood and you throw away your compostable items in such a bag, This bag, together with what is inside, will end up in a process that will heat up the material to be composted, and this way, yes, it will be biodegraded. But if you only bury this bag in your compost bin in your garden, it will not. It needs higher temperature to be biodegraded. But again, this depends on what happens in each country and even from city to city, because to a large extent, recycling schemes is a game that is played at a municipal level. One more reason to be more label conscious of what is written on these plastic bags. The essence here, something to remember, is that if even if it writes bioplastic, or if it writes that it comes from starch or corn, the essence is to remember that this does not mean that the material is recycled. It's not. It cannot be recycled. In some cases, it can be biodegraded, but in certain cases, not in all cases. So next. In our next activity, we write in the chat, how many of these are plastic creations? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Maybe we needed a little bit more pictures for this question, but they can imagine. Okay, many of you say all of them. Some leave one out of the plastic group. All.
We confused some of you.
Yes. And the pictures are a little bit small, but.
Yes, but all actually are made from plastic, and they're all plastic creations. So in this activity, for some reason I cannot go forward. And that was proposed by Nemo actually, and if we will have Sarah or someone else from Nemo that would like to share some thoughts on this activity, please, you're welcome to take the floor. Students are asked to make something wearable from plastics. So we should collect a wide range of plastic materials, including all these that we have been discussing so far: plastic packaging, old unused clothes, belts, together with some items to help connect these, for example, wire, some rope, needles, a wire cutter, some scissors, or a hot glue gun. And we give time to the students to this plastic collection and ask them to make something that they can wear from these plastics. So apart from clothes, wearable items can be hats, crowns, belts, bracelets, rings, pins, buttons, earrings, whatever they can create that can be worn by them. So we give them time to experiment with their ideas and their creations, and then we see the result. Do we have someone from Nemo? Is Sarah with us that would like to share some ideas, some reflections on this activity?
Sorry. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Is my video on? Yeah, my video is on also. Yeah. I think this is more of a tinkering activity. in which you give a starting point to the students to work with the materials you provided to them, and they can, between the criteria you have, think for themselves what they want to make. And I think we explicitly were going for the direction, not only something, so it can also be a hat or something, so all students can be involved, and not maybe only the students who are really into fashion. One thing is the STEM is, I think, most part in how you can connect the different kind of plastics or the same plastic, and you can have a lot of attention to it or less attention, whatever you would like to do. And we are going to test this one in, I think, next month. So I'm really excited to see what the students will make.
Please remember to send us photos. I'm very curious. Also, we're going to give it a try, hopefully, in the STEAM labs. So why, Inka, now that you have the floor, please, can you elaborate a little bit on why run such an activity, why you think it's useful?
Okay, I think, sorry, we have a lot of laptops here, so the sound is singing a lot. I think it is really important that we do different kind of activities, so activities that really are hands-on, are really our brains on, and that we can combine those things. And also, so it's about gaining knowledge and awareness, I think, with all the activities you already presented, but also by seeing that it can be more of a STEM activity or more of a hands-on activity, maybe that is not really about knowledge, but more about self-esteem or some other skills, social skills or technical skills developing. I think that's also important in this project. So.
Thanks, Inka. Thanks for sharing the idea of this activity. And actually, yes, the activity, we think that this activity can support all that Inka mentioned. Let's see. So one reason to do this activity is to have fun. When people are exposed with making something, doing a creation, they usually live with a smile during this process. So to have fun, to trigger creativity. Through a hands-on approach, we explore the physical properties of plastics. Some can be bended, some can be, they have this plasticity, others are stiff. And then, of course, to plan, build, test, and evaluate one's own creations, as Inka said. If you do this activity with your students, help them to work safely when using the wire, the hot glue gun, and so on. Insist on the creative process, not the result. Some outcomes may be very appealing, some others are less appealing aesthetically, but the scope here is to have fun and to create something. Suppress your urge to intervene to help students' problems. So this is a creation activity, as Inka said, and during the making of these creations, they may have some difficulties, and they can come to the teacher asking, can you help me to solve that, to do that? But it is suggested by us that you let them, let's say, navigate the whole process on their own. And of course, with more on the tinkering approach, this is a very interesting approach. We have some annex in the STEAM box with some tips on how to do this approach, and the website where you can learn more about this methodology. So do we have any more questions on this? No. Let's go to the next one. So another activity. If you were to create a collection of plastic objects to be seen by a visitor in 500 years from now, which item would each of you choose and why? So now you are asked to write in the chat, I choose whatever item you choose, because. Think also of the reason. I will give you some time. This is not something that is you can answer on the spot. Why, Guido, you wrote Lego blocks. Why you chose this? Write also the reason why. Thank you all for your creative thoughts that are shared in the chat. The others that are not have not yet replied can keep on adding very nice ideas. So in this activity, we propose to do that with the students to move to the future and make such a collection. We become plastic museum curators. We start by brainstorming why people often feel the need to collect things. Students can reflect on their own collections, things, toys, stickers that they collect for some reason, and then travel in time in the future, in 500 years from now, and do exactly what I asked you to do. Invite them to think of the role of plastic in 500 years from today. As one of you said, maybe polystyrene will not be a material that we will use, hopefully in 500 years from now. So after all the items have been presented by the students, negotiate with them ways to set up and communicate this imaginary collection under a single narrative, a story that connects them in a meaningful way. So students become curators themselves. They set up their exhibition, make cards for their objects, and invite their schoolmates and their families to walk through it. Why do we propose to do such an activity? Who wants to take the floor or write in the chat? Why this activity is interesting or useful or meaningful? To become a plastic museum curator. Alessia, you want to take the floor? Stimulate the imagination, you said.
In a museum, you generally see things that are no longer used so more. So hopefully in 500 years, plastic will no longer be used as much as today.
Yes, it will be an object of the past. Yeah, hopefully. So our intention when we were writing this activity is to make students imagine the distant future. I think that this activity gives the students the opportunity to practice analytical thinking, creative thinking, synthetic thinking, especially when they create this narrative that unites these objects. To practice in organizing content and making meaningful connections, and to practice presentation and communication skills if we go all the way through. Tips if you decide to run this activity. This activity requires abstract thinking, so it's proposed for older students, all primary I would suggest, or even better secondary level. Curation. Connecting items in a meaningful way needs time. So consider not doing this activity in a haste. We just did a demo here, but spread it throughout an entire school year project when you have the opportunity to deal with the subject of plastic waste in many ways. And they can start thinking and building this collection of the future throughout the year. So let students own the process. They should choose the items themselves and the links to create this narrative. I don't know if you have any questions, so we move to the next activity because I see the time is running. So please think of the entire process of waste management in your actual workspace. Your school, your office, your company, no matter where you work. How would you rate from 1 to 5 the waste management process in the place where you work? From 1 to 5, write in the chat.
It seems that we have an average satisfaction regarding waste management in our workspace, school or office, or it's not too bad. but for sure there's always room for improvement.
I see a lot of force, which is good. I see on the other side a couple of tools and only one placed in the middle. So I think that no matter where we work and how waste is managed in our office or at home, there's always room for improvement, as Vicky said. So in this activity, we have the opportunity to do that. And how we do that, we invite students to do a bin auditing, a school bin auditing. So in groups, using the floor plans of their school, they examine the actual condition of the waste management in their premise. How many bins are there? What type of materials do they get? How are they used? Are they used correctly by the schoolmates? What mistakes do they notice in the bins? Are they full and do we forget to empty them? Do we put wrong materials in them? Maybe we recycle plastic in a very proper manner, but we don't manage to do it with a paper. We identify these problems, and then depending on the problems, students set up a specific action plan with their proposed solutions. They communicate this plan to the administration, their teachers, and become responsible for its implementation. So in this activity, we become school bin auditors. Why do this activity? Who wants to share ideas? In the chat or taking the floor?
To make them feel that they can change something, to involve them in the process.
Yes, Michaela. Thank you for sharing that. Because we think also that change has to start from small steps in our immediate environment. So these environmental issues sometimes, many times, feel too big to be dealt with, and students are overwhelmed with these global problems like plastic pollution, climate change, and so on. But with this activity, we start with what is around them, around us, in the school where we spend half of our day, and we start doing something about it. Of course, in case we have problems. If everything is perfect, we don't need to do this activity. But in most cases, there are things to improve. This activity gives us the opportunity to understand the complexities around waste management in general. It's a complex issue with many players, many streams of materials, and a lot of issues at stake. We can practice mapping skills if we have a large school area. We can practice inquiry-based learning skills. Also to understand that there is no way when it comes to waste. And to consider, of course, ways to reduce it. Some tips when you're doing this activity, to paraphrase a very known phrase, we are what we throw away as a society. So maybe some kids will think that it's gross, I don't want to do this activity. Okay, trash can be gross, not plastic, of course, but other types of waste can be gross. But it is important to have an honest view of what we dispose, because it's part of our culture in general. We should stigmatize the act of not behaving as we should, not the people. The more ownership and responsibility the students have in finding solutions in the problems that they face, the more creative and committed they will be in the implementation of these solutions. In this activity, we propose combining it with another very useful methodology of design thinking. Again, you will find the link in Steambox. Going on to the next activity. Can you name a source of microplastics? Probably you have heard the term. Write a reflection in the chat. Where do microplastics come from? So I see most of you state washing clothes. Indeed. Synthetic clothes such as polyester is a common source of microplastic that reach the sea, but not only. Microplastics come also from the fragmentation of plastic objects. So we have big plastic objects that when they are exposed to the natural elements with the force of the sun, the waves, the rain, they become brittle. And then they break to ever smaller pieces. And when the size of these pieces, the diameter is smaller than 5 millimeters, we call them then microplastics. Another very common source that we often forget is cosmetics with microbeads, exfoliators, hairsprays, hair gels, scrubs. All these materials usually have microbeads. And there's, of course, the last years, a big movement in Europe and around the world to pressure the cosmetic companies to reduce them or take them out completely from their products. Another common source is car types. Every time we use the brake, some fibers are released. And another very, very common source is pellets. Pellets or mermaid's tears is the raw material from which we make plastic. I don't know if I should share my screen to show you what the pellet looks like. You can see it also.
Do you want to do stop sharing?
Yes, I can. Let me share. If you can see this, you can hear it. It's very light. It's a size of
lentils. It's like lentils.
Yes, it's like lentils. Different colors, meaning a different polymer that will become a different product. And if you think that these are scarce in nature, they are not. You can easily find them in the sea. In this other tube that I have, this is plastics in the composition that has become microplastics. So these are plastics that just broke to ever smaller pieces. Now we cannot identify from which object they come from. And all these were collected in a beach cleanup. So I can share again. In this activity, we become microplastic hunters. We have two sections in the activity, one for outdoor and one for indoor. So when we're outside, we visit the beach, trace the winter shoreline. I will show you how you can learn to recognize this. We set a stretch area, for example, 10, 20, or even 100 meters, depending on our group. We split our class in groups and look for microplastics. Maybe we need a sheaf, some tools to collect these. Usually I collect them by hand with no extra equipment. Indoor, for the indoor version of the activity, we look for microplastics in the labels of personal hygiene products. So since they are polymers, they are usually named as poly something. So again, it's an activity that has to do with learning to recognize, to read and recognize the labels of products. So we read the labels of products and find if they have polymers, which means microplastics in them. An alternative activity for schools that are far from the sea can be run with checking what's going on with a laundry machine, if it has a filter for these fibers. Thankfully, the technology has evolved and the new generation washing machines can actually trap a lot of these. And we have also these bags that are out, you can find out in the market that you can use, and they collect the fibers from our polyester clothes. So why do such an activity? Trace the microplastics. Anyone wants to take the floor?
To be aware that plastic doesn't disappear, it only turns into something smaller, and it's everywhere around us.
Thank you, Michaela. Indeed, there's no way, as we said in the previous activity. It's everywhere. Microplastics are everywhere. So we realize that with this activity. Also, we practice STEAM skills. Once again, observation, field survey, math skills, if we do a sum of what we found. We practice in experiential hands-on learning. And of course, we are outside, so we practice outdoor learning, which has certain merits, of course. If you do this activity, it is easier to find microplastics on a sandy beach. So avoid rocky beaches or beaches with pebbles. Microplastics are there, but it will be more difficult for you to find them. So if you have a sandy beach nearby, it's better that you visit this one. As a teacher, you need to visit the spot in advance and find some microplastics yourselves. Learn to trace the winter shoreline. So this is the line where these materials are accumulated. In beach cleanups, we now often find fragmented plastics that cannot be identified. So this is something that evolved in the last decade. Up until 8-10 years ago, in the beach cleanups that are all around the world, we didn't count them, we didn't see them. But with the explosion of single-use plastics in the market, which happened in the last 10-15 years, we see now the explosion of plastic pollution in our beaches and thereby also microplastics. Have handy 2 jars for students, so collect at least a small amount of these microplastics to show them in advance what they are looking for. And here in this slide, we see where this winter shoreline is. So you see there is a certain area where all the branches, the wood, the pebbles tend to collect. Under this area, you will find the microplastics. And the same goes for this piece, you see. Next activity. What percentage of global plastic production is meant for packaging? A, B, or C? And second question, what is the percentage of plastics that is being recycled globally? So you answer in both questions in the chat. You make a guess. Some of you are very well prepared, others make a wild guess. So 36% of the global plastic production as of today or 1 or 2 years ago goes to packaging. This means that is material that will be used only once. You can understand that this is a huge percentage. We extract petroleum, we process it, we make the polymer needed, and then we come with this bag or film or whatever that is used only once. It's really, and this accounts for 36% of the global plastic production. It's huge. It cannot go on like that. And what is actually being recycled? Because the plastic industry tells us another misconception that all plastics can be recycled. No, as we saw before, not all plastic types can be recycled, and actually we don't have the infrastructure to do it. And globally, only 9% has ever been recycled of whatever plastic has ever been made in the last 60 or 70 years when we have plastics in our lives. So the rest, which is 91%, is in the planet somewhere around us. So this is again huge. In this activity, we call it Zero Plastic Challenge. We ask the students to find some facts for the plastics, especially the single-use ones. They know or sketch some of their daily habits using them. And as a class, they voluntarily hold the Zero Plastic Challenge, which means no plastic consumption in my life for 1 or more days that we decide all together. They note in a diary their feelings for their little victories and defeats. As we said before, plastic has invaded in our lives to a point that life is unthinkable without it. So even if you want to become plastic-free in your life, you cannot actually do it. But there are ways, of course, to minimize these soups, the single-use ones. At the end of this challenge, they may decide if they want to go on with some of their new habits. So why should we do this activity? Any ideas? Michaela or another one? We're 32 online, hopefully. Please take the floor.
As a challenge for them, and they will actually see that in a small part they can actually do it.
Yes, indeed. Opa, sorry. So to realize how plasticized our lives are, and to recognize and differentiate these soups that are synonymous to convenience. These were not so abundant in our life only 5 or 6 years ago. This is a very recent thing, this invasion of soups in our lives, and to think creatively how to avoid them. This, of course, can only be a voluntary activity. You cannot force anyone to take this challenge unless they're willing to give it a try, because, as we said, it is something that takes us out of our comfort zone. We will do things We will consume the things differently. We will look for shops in the market that sell in bulk. We will buy in bulk things. We will avoid the easiness of purchases with a lot of plastic. So this requires also good planning and finding alternatives in advance. So we have all these alternatives explained with our students. And one, of course, has to be creative and resilient to move on, to transit towards a plastic-free lifestyle. As a teacher, we advise, of course, to be part of the challenge yourself and share your own victories and pitfalls and challenges. And we avoid patronizing. We don't all have the same interest about the subject. We don't all start from the same starting point. The point here is that everyone does something, starts from something. We are 2 or 3 activities away. Okay, now completely please the phrase in the chat. In order to help solve the problem of plastic pollution, I can or I could. How would you end this phrase? Please think of verbs, actions you can do in your personal life, your actual daily consumption habits. And also use the first person. How would you end this phrase? In order to help solve the problem of plastic pollution, I can. So I like the fact that in your replies, some of you think of consumption, your personal consumption. So you say you will avoid soups, you will reject them, you will carry your bags and so on. But I like that some of you still think of how you will convince the others. So someone wrote, I can teach my students, I can convince, or I can talk about this subject with someone. This is also very, very important. So in this activity called the Hours of Sustainability, we start with thinking of how we dispose common plastic objects and how through these action verbs, like the ones that you shared, students can be part of the solution. It's nice in English because we have these R's, I repair, I reuse, I recycle, and so on. But of course, there are other verbs that are equally or even more powerful than them. So we discuss these verbs, the ideas of the students, and then we ask them to prioritize these verbs. What is more important, repairing or reusing or avoiding, let's say, or talking about it, trying to convince someone. And then with discussion, they may consider moving up their action verbs and then settle in their personal hierarchies. And then we can discuss how we can be further motivated to change a habit. Why do such an activity? Why discuss about these action verbs? See in the chat some replies to brainstorm, to raise awareness. Another reason to do that is to discover the plethora of actions that we can take against plastic pollution. It's a complex problem, as we said, but there are very many things that we can do as consumers to solve it. This activity also is an opportunity for us to rethink our personal behaviors, our personal actions against the problem, and to take a personal stand. If you do this activity, remember that action verbs are not necessarily are verbs, that not all the verbs have the same power, they're not equally effective in addressing the problem or in reaching solutions. It's okay for each student to have their own hierarchies, their personal choice, and try to avoid the single action bias. What is this? Many people tend to think that just because I recycle, I am done with what I'm supposed to do for the environment. Wrong. It shouldn't be like that. We are at a point where we have to do many things in the way we consume, in the way we travel, in the way we consume food, in all aspects, in the way we deal with climate change. So address, if you happen to notice the single action bias that is very common in many people, adults and children, address it and try to motivate your students to do more. If someone does already one or two things, then we have to build a step further than that. Remember also, especially for recycling, that the quality of plastics is lowered once recycled. So recycling can never be on the top of our hierarchy of the solutions. At the top of our hierarchy can only be minimization, avoidance of using them. Overall, plastics can be, in the best scenario, be recycled 6 to 7 times. And even though we call it recycling, actually it is downcycling, because usually the PET bottles, for example, that we commonly recycle, are not recycled to make again a PET bottle, but a product with a lower quality. For example, a rope, or I don't know. These are all things that we need to address in our discussions with the students. Now think of your next work feast, your party, your family gathering, your birthday, whatever. Name one item that you could actually avoid or reduce or manage better for a less wasteful feast. Plastic plates, I see. Now with this new European law, we will, in any case, avoid plastic waste because plastic plates, because we won't be able to find them in the supermarket. But now the point of this exercise is to think of our consumption during our feasts and not to change the plastic plate for a plate from bamboo, for example, which I see now in the supermarkets. Because again, this is the single-use mentality. I take something, I use it, and then I throw it away. We need to train ourselves and our students to break this comfort, this easiness in our life. So maybe we need to reconsider the snacks that we buy, how we will serve them. Maybe we will invite our invitees to bring something from home. There are many things, depending on the occasion, of course, that we can do to minimize single-use plastics. What we do in this activity, on an occasion of an upcoming school feast or a party in which a lot of people are expected at school and snacks will be offered, students think of way to organize it without any soups. They browse for ideas for plastic-free parties. You can find a lot of ideas in the internet to make their own decoration, to make their own hats, for example, or to make gifts or souvenirs for their invitees that are plastic-free, and so on. After they feast, they reflect on those green practices that they tried and reflect if they want to make them in the future. As we're running out of time, I explained to you why we think it's you can do this activity to rethink our consumption habits during the gatherings, and actually to walk the talk regarding the minimization of these soups. So to show that it is possible to hold a feast or a party without them. Remember that reaching zero waste will take repeated efforts. The key is to do something every time and keep improving from one event to the next. So don't be disappointed if from the first trial you won't get many results. You need to keep trying. I think this is the last activity. What does sustainable school mean to you? So we would like to focus out from the issue of plastics now and think of our sustainable school, or if you want, sustainable office. What does it mean to you personally? So write some keywords in the chat. I'm sorry that we don't have time to discuss your interesting ideas, but it's a question that I think deserves discussion with your students. So it's a dream, it's a long-term vision. What is this? We think it's valuable for you to hold this discussion with your students and to have this vision clear, even if it's not feasible and even if we are far from it. It's important to have it and to believe that one day we can get there. So in this activity, after discussing this vision of the ideal sustainable school and negotiating it with them, we create a sustainability alphabet. So for each letter, they propose a very realistic and practical action that they can do from now on for a greener or more sustainable school. And of course, our ideas will move beyond waste and plastic pollution. As you said, it has to do with a connection with nature, with the connection with our colleagues, and so on. So in this activity, we consider the school and its people as an entity. We practice creative thinking. We link plastic pollution with other challenges of sustainability, such as energy, water, transport, green spaces, food, the relations amongst the school staff, the free time, and so on. If you do that, keep in mind of this wider picture of sustainability and try to link the visionary sustainability statements with realistic and practical actions. Otherwise, they remain a wish list, and we don't want that. With a little bit of delay, I think we are done with presenting all the activities of the material. Some concluding remarks from our part. Of course, you can adjust them according to your needs. Already the material is there, available in 5 languages, if I remember well. The activities are self-standing, so you can choose to do only one activity if you don't find time. There is no linear sequence between them, as you have seen, so you can choose your own learning path according to the students. In each activity, we tried to keep them very condensed. So most of the activities are only 1 page. So two pages, actually, 1 sheet of paper. But there are some recommended websites, and we advise you to browse in them. And if you want to enrich them with ones that are relevant to your country. Yes, if you are based in a Plasteam country, I think that people in this webinar are, consider connecting the Steam box with the app, the Plastic Footprint app that I mentioned already, as well as the school contest that will be announced in the next months, inviting schools from the partner countries to trace a problem relating to plastic and to find solutions to address. So you can read more in our plastic web page. You can find there the material and download it. I forgot to mention that the material, let's say it's in a beta phase. If after application you have certain comments and ideas that emerged with implementation for improving it, please send them to our email at Medis by December. And we will close with the evaluation link for this webinar. I can share this in the chat with you, but if you want to share also some oral comments on how you feel about this new material, please, you're welcome to take the floor. I will stop sharing. Vicky has shared the evaluation. I'm very happy and thankful that 30 people stayed for 1.5 hours with us. Yes, I will share the presentation as well as the recording. We will upload the PowerPoint presentation and the recording, so they will be available for future use for your teachers.
You can also add here, Iro, that this recording may help as a guide for the application, like the pilot application of the STEAM box, and also for the labs, the STEAM labs.
Yes, indeed. We wanted to record this webinar in order for you to get ideas, to be helpful for you, to get some ideas that you can use in the STEAM labs that will take place in the next few months in all our countries. So any oral comment or reflection? We have here Guido, our project leader, who may share some thoughts before we close.
Yes, I want to thank you, all of you, and especially Iro and Vicky, for this great presentation of the STEAM box. And I hope that a lot of teachers will participate with their students in our contest, where they can also use the STEAM box you just presented to us. Thank you very much. You can find more information at the plasteam.eu website. And yeah, hopefully we see each other soon again. Thank you.
Thanks, Guido. See you next time. I see a comment from Ida. In case you want to hear from us to get updates, please make sure you leave your email in the chat so that we can collect all these and then the national partners can reach you. So that's all from us. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.